When you measure aging, you measure millions and millions of changes. What people are afraid of mostly is the diseases, really the quality of life.
Hey, humans!
Welcome to another edifying edition of Demystifying Science. Today, we've got a conversation with a gerontologist, a scientist that studies longevity and aging, Dr. Nir Barzilai.
We were lucky enough to get into several lines of inquiry that this totemic thinker introduces in his new book, Age Later. The difference between health years and life years, what health looks like in the future, and the problems with the promise of exercise.
Not everybody loves exercise. It was particularly interesting to speak with him since he's made so many discoveries. He was the first human to identify a longevity gene. He also discovered that the diabetes drug metformin had an off-label use that extended healthy life years even in people without diabetes. And he identified the push-pull relationship between growth and repair in age-related decline.
And as the founding director of the Institute for Aging Research, the Center for Excellence in Basic Biology of Aging, and the Center for the Biology of Human Aging Research at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, he has demonstrated a canny ability to understand and fight complex processes of age-related decline.
His steadfast pursuit of understanding was initiated during his years at the Israeli army, where he rose to the rank of chief medic by his early 20s. His decorated military service and larger experience with the high-pressure environment of Special Forces raids taught him that if you are not afraid, you can do a lot.
You sure can. Following his military service, he trained for his MD at the Technion Israel Institute of Technology in Haifa, Israel, then came to the U.S. in 1987 as a resident at Yale University. His aspiration to study aging, and even reverse it, was difficult to pursue at first, but he didn't turn his back on the task, and now he's received numerous awards for the progress he's made in mechanistic understanding of aging. He's published nearly 200 papers in the field and has a long history of academic excellence dating back to his days on the dean's list at his medical college. He's come to be respected by his peers, and today he serves as a reviewer and editor at several prestigious journals.
He is the one that people come to ask about aging. In addition to his academic work, Dr. Barzilai is involved with several companies that promote molecular therapies aimed at slowing the inevitable failure of health that accompanies aging. His company, CoBar, focuses on restoring healthy mitochondrial function to promote longevity. They hope to target a broad range of maladies, including non-alcoholic liver disease, diabetes, cancer, and neurodegenerative disorders. He is also a chief medical advisor for Life Biosciences, the first biotech company devoted entirely to addressing age-related decline.
In addition to teaching us about how humans are developing medicine to fight unhealthy aging, Dr. Barzilai speaks with us about more basic human crises. The difficulty of prescribing lifestyle, for instance, or the dire threat of growing inequality and the limits on medicine itself.
We think that you're going to love this conversation. Dr. Barzilai is witty, kind, and sharp, with a wealth of wisdom about aging and life itself. Make sure you check out the description of the video to follow up on topics and books mentioned.
Remember to like and subscribe to our channel. It helps us out a ton, and it costs you nothing.
Not a thing. See you next time, and enjoy the conversation.
Hello, I'm so excited to meet you.
It's very
Hi.
good to meet you as well.
And who's who there?
So I'm Quinn, and this is Micky.
Hey,
And where you're from, there's actually a sex, or how does it go? Like, is there a male and female? I'm sorry, I just don't know you that well.
Truly a scientific question. I appreciate it.
I'm definitely a man.
He prefers that. But not everyone on our planet decides. It's dependent on the environment in which you grow up in. It's dependent on conditions. Over the course of the history of the planet, there's times where there's many more sort of intersex situations where when it's too hot or there's too many people or it's too crowded or it's too cold, things will change. But for
So
now,
I'll tell you how it's going to be even more confusing for you, just as much as it's confusing for us when you come and visit us. Okay, let's say you come and visit in a place not far from where I am. It's called Central Park in a big city called New York City. And I think the first 48 hours will be very confusing for you because you'll see creatures on four and creatures walking on two. And you would ask yourself, just a minute, who's calling the shots? Who's the ruler in this planet? Because you will see the people in two, for example, picking up the poop of those on four, right? So it'll take you just 48 hours to see that it's the people on two that are actually ruling.
wow.
And, I'm not walking on those. But I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Um, are you going to visit us?
We're actually on our way right now. So we were sent out here to refuel some drones, and well, we decided we'd do a little science on the way. Study the
So,
humans.
so the reason that I'm, a scientist too, is so excited is for the following thing. It's really a question for you, but we are planning to go to Mars.
We've heard.
I'm assuming that you're much farther than Mars, okay? Because we would have seen you before, okay? So I'm assuming you're farther from Mars. But for us to go to Mars, if we don't take care of aging, if we age the rate that we age, we're going to get cancer on the way there. We're not going to make it on the way back. And I'm sure that you handled it. Okay. You already conquered aging. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on your way.
That's
How,
true.
how did you do that?
So I'm actually almost 500,000 Earth years old. But it's not always that way on our planet. We have a strange relationship to death where we have control over how long we live. So if we have a lot of projects that require
Purpose.
us to hang around, we choose to do so. Not everyone does.
It's like the queen bees in our planet.
Huh.
They live so much more than the workers because I guess their administrative job is kind of more purposeful and demanding or something like that.
Oftentimes, people run out of things to care about and things to do, or not people, Alvaflossians.
Alphaflossian people.
Alvaflossian people. And when they run out of things to do, they basically just go into the woods and become part of the planet again. And the rest of us, we have mechanisms which, Micky and I talk about this all the time. And we can't give too much away to you humans. Because if we tell you all the secrets, you'll never learn how to figure things out for yourselves.
Okay, we'll keep on guessing, but maybe we can move ahead a little bit. So because at least we should be able to visit you too. I think that's how it would work here. I hope.
I hope so. Well, humans have to figure out a little bit, they have to figure out how to get their chaos under control.
That's
What,
the biggest problem.
one of the reasons that we were sent out here is that humans have become an intergalactic species. You're planning on going to Mars, but you've left the solar system and you're headed out to the far reaches of it, and at some point you're going to leave that too. And misunderstanding and chaos is one of the most contagious forces in the universe. And if you leave without having a good understanding of how things work and how they fit together and why things happen,
Nature.
nature itself, then you run the risk of destabilizing everyone.
So it sounds like a little one-sided. You want to ask questions. I believe the question you're going to ask me, you figured out yourself already. How can I help? How can we take this relationship to the next level?
Well, we want to learn the state of the art on Earth. So we're trying to learn how humans have handled the problems. Maybe we can learn something from you.
And what the human problems, in your perspective, are. One of the things that happened on Alva Floss when we began to live for a very long time is that we had many social problems. We had many psychological problems. It was difficult to come to terms with the fact that we had such a long life, but not all of us did. And so death became a much more central concern. It was something that we thought about from a young age, as opposed to being something that, just sneaks up on you.
Well, we are there. There are a lot of people here who are fascinated with immortality.
Are you one of
Uh,
them?
I've met a lot of them, and I'm not one of them. Um, for me, if Earth is going to survive for 12 billion years, that's one estimate. Maybe you have better data. I think it's probably sooner. So let's say I'm now 64 years old in Earth age. And if you tell me now you can live for 12 billion years more, I, I'm going to become tired right away. I just don't see how that goes.
Yeah.
Um, and there is a movie. I hope the concept of movie is, yeah, that's probably how you record things. There was a movie made on Immortalist, and uh, it interviewed three scientists who are immortalists and were really determined to get there. And I was I was commenting at the end of the movie, like I was leading a discussion. And so there are 300 people in the audience coming to see the movie that's called The Immortalist. Okay, so you would think you pick those up. Um, and I asked them, I told them you have two choices. Choice number one is a little bit what I think you're exhibiting. I'm not sure, but okay, I can make you immortal. It takes what it takes for you. It takes to be involved in something, but it's possible to be immortal. But there's only one thing: we cannot have more people. So we're just moving forward. There's not going to be new children. There's not going to be the first laugh. There's not going to be the first birthday. There are not going to be any more weddings. There are not going to be any. We're just moving forward. That's option one. But you're immortalist. You live forever. Option two is I'm going to promise you that I can get you to the age of 85 without being one day sick. Okay? Those are the two options. Okay. Who's for option one? Only 6 people raised their hands, which surprised me. And it underlines the problem for many of us that it's not the lifespan as much as the health span. Because what happens to us after the age of 60, we start getting sick. We get one disease and we're treated for that. And then we get another disease and another treatment. And then it's three diseases with their own problems, with their own treatment. And the treatment interacts with one another. And this is not the way to move on.
Yeah. I loved how you talked about that in the book, the dichotomy between those two forms of
So
aging.
you read my book?
Oh, yeah.
My book is there.
Not much to do in space besides read.
Amazon. I bet it's Amazon.
We
Well-
actually contacted your publisher and they sent us a copy. We didn't
They're
tell them we
very
were
friendly.
aliens, though. I'm not sure they would have if we did.
So,
So this brings up a very interesting point because the mechanism of immortality is a very different mechanism than simply delaying the aging process. And one seems almost impossible based off of what we know of human biology. And honestly, almost all earthly biology. There are examples of organisms that can dissolve back into a single cell and then restart growth, but that's not really persistent immortality. But, oh, go ahead.
Eh, I'll give you one example, and I don't disagree with you on principle, but I want to give you an example. You can take here on Earth a sperm of a 70-year-old man, so that's old in Earth years, okay? And you can take an egg of a 50-year-old woman. 50-year-old women are not reproductive, okay? But you can take those sperm and egg, and we can measure their age actually, and you can fertilize the egg with the sperm. And what you have is really the stem cells that are going to make the new baby. And the stem cells of those babies, these blastocytes that is forming, doesn't remember the age of the parents. It erased the aging of its parents.
Wow.
And it starts from zero. So in this situation, our body has figured out what to do. And that's why I don't think that we have to take off the table that will do something that maybe is similar to what you guys have done. I know it's secret, but it's a possibility.
What do you find is more interesting to your patients? Option A or option B?
Uh, well, once you set patients, patients means that they come to the doctor because of a disease.
Uh,
If you would say subjects or people, it's something else. But patients come with a disease. And what people are afraid of mostly from aging is the diseases of aging that are associated with pain, with decreased lifestyle, life enjoyment, um, and really the quality of life that we all want to have.
And many of these interventions that you speak about in your book, they seem like they're lifestyle interventions in some ways. Certainly there are pharmaceuticals that you mention, metformin, rapamycin, uh, resveratrol, and red wine, but many of the things that are being developed are biochemical medicines. So when someone comes to you and they are aging in a way that is unhealthy and they have diseases and they are afraid, is there some way for them to reverse the course by relying on physical changes and lifestyle changes? Or
Or different interaction with the environment, right?
exactly, exactly.
And yeah, and the answer is yes, although I want to qualify it by it makes you likelier to get over the age of 80, but we have a potential as a species here on Earth. The humans have a potential to live 115 years.
Wow.
We kind of argue, you know. Somebody lived 122, probably more than one person live over 122, um, but that's about where we are. And now we are dying before the age of 80. I mean, many in the United States are dying before the age of 76. So we have like 30 years, 40 years where we can realize much better uh, our aging than what we're doing now. Okay. So, what I'm saying, I'll tell you, I'll answer your question, but not to say that this is enough. We should do better than just intervention with the environment. But clearly, there are two things that matter most. Okay, and I'm not taking anything off the table, but matter most. And I would say the first one is that is exercise. Okay, because exercise at any age, in any sex, is always beneficial. It's always beneficial. And so if you're asking, if an old man come and ask, I really don't want to age, what should I do? The first thing I would say is start exercising, and there are ways to start exercising. I would say if you haven't done it before, start walking, but get to 10,000 steps again a day. It'll take more than an hour to do that, but try and get as close to that as possible. But other forms of exercise are also very important. We don't know to say exactly how much and how many times a week, and we don't know to say if there's too much, if there's too little. Well, there is too little, but uh, but we don't have it all.
So, do
The
the
second,
patients how do they respond to getting a prescription of exercise instead of a medicine?
oh God, that's a great question. How is it in your planet?
Well, like I said, it's very personalized on our planet. I found that I love the kind of exercise that I do on the ship, which is kind of similar to your human rock climbing. I like to climb on the ceiling. It's kind of weird sounding, but keeps me stretched out and fit. So,
so so did you get a prescription to do that? Like
well,
you asked me.
I had to explore. I had to explore a lot of different exercises before I found one that was fun. It all came down to it being fun for me in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you start doing it, it becomes fun. It's harder to stop actually, but it takes a while to get there. But um, but I'm seeing patients, actually sick people who have a disease called diabetes. Diabetes happens in family, happens more with obesity, and 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 one thing that can help is exercising. And so the typical patient will come to me and I'll say, start exercising. I would say that between 3 and 5% of the people will do that. That's all.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
uh, there's more people who are involved in that. Young people are doing better,
Why is
but
that?
this is really, people find it difficult. People find it difficult. They don't know how. They don't have time. They don't have always where to do it. The poorer the people, the less they would exercise. Lots of obstacles for exercise, which are not different than the obstacles to tell them to do diet. How about you and diets? What is your diet?
I eat
Well,
You
rocks.
said there are plants. You said there are plants in your uh, uh, place, but what is your diet?
So I eat radioactive rocks and I subsist off of the radioactive energy. And so I've basically removed myself from the necessity of dealing with macro and micronutrients. I absorb
So
most,
you're like a nuclear plant, basically.
basically, exactly.
So,
I eat worms and plants and stuff. Normal.
oh, you do.
I'm kind of closer to you guys.
Very diverse,
I have to
personalized,
grow. I
like you said.
grow my worms here.
It's
I have
disgusting.
a wormatorium.
So, so this thing that you see behind me floating, those bubbles, they're called mitochondria, and they're our energy source in the cells of our body.
They look like bacteria or something.
Oh, absolutely, you're right. Do you have bacteria too?
Oh yeah,
Bacteria are everywhere.
my worms eat them.
So those bacterias, they were bacterias, but they kind of found a way to coexist in another organelle that's called cell. They're all inside the cell, and and the cell has lots of control over what's going to happen, but the mitochondria is providing the energy, and it's also protecting against a very toxic chemical. I wonder if you have that. It's called oxygen.
Oh
Do you have
yeah,
oxygen?
Oh, yes.
I need
So
oxygen.
how are you dealing with oxygen? It should have made you really weak. If you have only energy and not protection from oxygen, What is the percentage of oxygen in your atmosphere?
Well, actually, we've developed ways to respire using other metals as well, so oxygen's not always necessary.
On Earth, I have seen that most organisms that live on the surface require oxygen as their energy source because of the fact that it's so energy dense. You go between sugars and you oxygen, and then you have a tremendous amount of metabolic power that's released in that reaction. But for us, we have managed to have a mutualistic relationship with different kinds of bacteria. And so in my intestines, I have bacteria that are capable of extracting electricity from the rocks that I eat, as well as the radioactive energy. And so, because I have this mutualistic relationship, I'm able to survive even in the presence of oxygen because I have systems in my cells that manage the destructive power of oxygen. But I know that that's not the case for humans and all.
Well, right. It's not the case, except that we also have bacteria in our guts.
Hmm.
And bacteria also has many roles. I don't think we looked at this specific role that you said. It's probably not typical to our bacterias, but we have bacterias that play a role that we, by the way, don't totally understand. But we know that if we change this bacteria, it causes changes in the whole body. So it's definitely something that is important for us too.
Does it play a role in aging as well? The, it's called the
Um,
microbiome and the
right,
virome and.
right. It's called the microbiome, and I'm kind of on a fence about it. Do you know what's a fence? Do you have
We
do
have
you have
most.
like United States and Mexico and a fence in between? Do you have those things?
We've moved past that. We did in the past. So we learn about it in school as a historical oddity.
I keep my
Okay, I
worms
hope
behind a fence.
That's true.
after 2020 we can say we had it in the past too. But anyhow, uh, saying I'm the fence is saying that I'm not really decided for sure how important it is, because if you look at what happens, you take many people, young and old, and you see what's their bacteria. There's no difference
Hmm.
in the bacteria of young and old, unless the old people are sick. They're getting antibiotics, which is something that kills bacteria.
Of course.
Or they're in certain disease in a certain institute where the food is different with what they're used to, things like that. So at large, microbacteria doesn't change, but it doesn't mean that some of it is not going to be better than others. So,
Well, you speak about neurotransmitters and hormones and blood signals for aging in your book. And I know that in humans, the bacteria that are in the intestines tend to produce a lot of these compounds that are then shunted into the blood. And so, if there's no difference between young and old for different individuals, is there any chance that there is difference between young and old for the same individual?
yeah, it's absolutely. So, um, yeah, so those we're waiting for the results of those, but
But that takes time.
yeah, yeah, I'm certainly, this is what happens on Earth. Okay, somebody finds really something really interesting, and soon everybody's talking about it. That's the most important thing. Okay, that happened with microbacteria. Everything is microbacteria. Your cognition is microbacteria. Your body is microbacteria. Everything is microbacteria. And then after this excitement, papers are coming, and you get some questions, some results were not validated, and you get eventually to the level of enthusiasm that it deserves. And with microbacteria, we're not there.
I see.
There was an initial excitement. Not everything was validated. There are experiments that are really interesting and others that are not. And we don't know where we should be excited yet about it.
That reminds me of a different human situation where many years ago, I saw that humans were very excited about something called telomeres in relationship to aging. And in your book, you didn't speak too much about them. Is that one of those things where the excitement has faded to the level that it deserves?
Um, you're right. I think that's a great example. And still people say, well, so we know all about aging. So what are we doing about these telomeres? And the telomeres are not all. In fact, we basically agree that there are 8 hallmarks of aging. Okay, one of them is those telomeres, and um, and they're all playing a role. And if you can manipulate each one of them, you can affect the aging process. But the story with the telomeres, as I said in the book, um, they're shortening. There's no doubt that those telomeres, those addition at the end of each of our chromosome is getting smaller when the cells are dividing. Okay, and um, and there was a proposal that when they are done, okay, then we are done. And it's true only in a certain sense. When our cells are dividing an infinite number of times, okay, it after that becomes, instead of a cell that divides, a cell that's called senescent cells. And it becomes senescent in part because those telomeres are short. And this senescent cell is uh, is associated with its own role on the environment of the body. Okay, um, but if you make the telomeres longer, the animals that are being tested are developing cancer.
Hmm.
On the other hand, if you cut down the telomeres, the gene that controlled the telomeres, nothing happened to the animals.
Hmm.
Okay, nothing happened to the animals unless you do it many generations, and so you get the telomeres to be shorter and shorter all the time, and then you can get into problem if it's in the sperm. Okay, but you can take it out from an animal and nothing happens, and the animal still ages.
Hmm.
So in other words, telomeres are very important physiologically, but I cannot say that they're the reason we age.
Aging in general seems like a very complex phenomenon. In your book, you have a diagram that is a circle with all of the different things that feed into
Different
the process.
pathways, inflammatory signals, stuff like that.
It looks almost like a piece of sacred geometry, you know, the tree of life images that people show, which underlines just how complex of a phenomenon it is. And you are also very confident that it's a phenomenon that humans will get a handle on.
Uh, you know, I think I think what's kind of misleading here, it's the story maybe that you have of seeing the trees in the forest, right, to distinguish between the tree and the forest. It's absolutely true that when you measure aging, you measure millions and millions of changes. That's very different than saying that there are few ways where we can target it and all those million changes will not occur. Okay, um, it happens also in diseases. You know, if somebody has heart failure, then they cannot move, they're losing muscle, they cannot breathe, their kidney function is not well. But if you actually treat the heart failure, all of those will improve. Okay, it's so I think you have to distinguish between the fact that aging looks like, oh God, what can we do with all those changes, to just a minute. If there's a control, if there's a leadership here, if there's hierarchy, we can do it, and maybe we can do it at different ages, and we can get a handle of that. And that's what's beautiful, that we went from hope to promise, and we're trying to realize the promise of targeting aging.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah, I want to go back to exercise because it seems like it's by far and away the best thing you humans can do to stave off aging and live healthier for longer. And I wonder how you could promote a future where exercise is found. Is that possible?
Uh, or you create medicine that are imitating exercise. What's wrong with that?
Hmm.
Do you think that it's possible to create a pill that will give the psychological benefits of exercise as well as the physical ones?
Um,
Because there's
there
something
are,
very, very physical about exercise, right?
yeah,
The
I just,
joy of it.
yeah, I just want to make sure that Mickey is not insulted from my previous. I was very wise guy in answering you.
A true New
You're
Yorker.
asking me how we can get people to exercise, and I totally agree. I'd love to do that. I'd
Well,
love to do it. And you know, uh, if you look at the data, which I don't have, and so I'm not an expert on that, but if you look at the data, exercising has taken off. The generation, my kids' generation, exercise is a routine part of their lives. I had to start it sometime because I believed in it and nobody was around me. And now there are gyms, which is nothing that was really there when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are, the marathons and the ultra marathons, and somehow um, personalized exercise became a thing. And so I think that you can sell that to people. You can sell that, and if they get there, they usually don't want to go back because you're addicted to the exercise. And I guess that's where I'm coming to. Quinn's question is: there's a body and mind, and the body and minds are connected, and they're connected in several ways, including through microbiome, by the way. So is the pill that will increase the muscle, will make the muscle exercise without us feeling it, without the pain? Is it going to give us the satisfaction that the brain has? I don't think we know. I agree that it's important, but I don't think that we know that. I hope it does.
well, in your book, you also talk that a lot of the most ancient humans that you have still alive have found some sort of routine spiritual practice. And it makes one wonder whether exercise could be included in that.
I like that.
Yeah. Um,
Like, if you only have 3% of your patients who will respond to the suggestion of exercise, perhaps there's some sort of program or intermediary agency professional that you haven't even developed yet who could take that role on. What do you think?
I guess it's a good idea. I just want to make one point about what I said in my book. In my book, I said that our 100 years old where less than 50% were doing even moderate
I
exercising,
saw
which
that,
include
yeah.
walking, housework, things like that, biking. So for those people, it didn't really matter if they exercise. It didn't matter also what they ate because almost 50% of them were obese or overweight.
But the other
Uh,
50%,
It
well,
seems in the book over and over again there is this.
it's like bimodal, right? There's one
no,
population that does nothing and has.
no, it's not about
Oh,
it's
oh, oh.
not bimodal. It's not bimodal. It's actually it's very modal, but some are falling over here and some are falling over there. But but the point for them is that they have longevity genes that protected their aging, so they didn't need to exercise. So I don't want to
That's
confuse, because it sounds like I'm saying if you have longevity, don't exercise. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to find longevity genes to develop drug. That's something else than actually exercising, which will delay aging. Maybe would have delayed aging with them even more.
Right.
Okay.
yeah. That's all I meant by bimodal was you have almost two bins of
Agents.
cause. Maybe there's some folks with mutations and some folks who have lived in a productive way.
Yeah, is that
Yeah,
possible that there's basically some that have distinct mutations that have caused them to live for a long time, and then other
yeah,
supercentenarians?
absolutely.
Two paths.
Uh, sorry.
Like there's two paths to the same party.
So, so for example, in nature here on Earth, there is an exchange between reproduction and aging, in the sense that if you get if you get people to if you get animals, if you stop reproduction in animals, they live longer, and if you'll increase reproduction, they'll do shorter.
Males
But
and females?
males and females.
Interesting.
Yeah, actually, it's very interesting. It's a good question, but we can come back to that later. But there's another thing that is even more relevant for our centenarians, and that's their growth. Um, because you have to reproduce and then you have to grow.
Hmm.
When you grow, you need a lot of energy to spend on growth. But when you get old, if this energy is spent on growth, you're taking it away from energy that spends on repair.
Hmm.
And our centenarians, almost 60% of them have mutations that do not allow the growth hormone to act very well. And I think this is kind of a very important, almost common pathway. You have to slow growth so you have more energy to defend against aging.
So, because many of these things are you're finding on the genetic level, on Earth, a historical way of dealing with these things has been to give people pills. You give a person a pill and they take the pill. The company that makes the pill is happy. The person taking the pill is happy as long as there's no serious side effects. But there is this revolution that's coming, which is gene editing, right? So
CRISPR.
CRISPR-Cas?
Oh, you had it for 100,000 years already.
Well, we call it something else.
Yeah.
But is this the path that you imagine these technologies heading down?
Not necessarily. Look, the reason we're finding genes is if we can find a gene and understand what kind of action happens by the gene, we could usually design a medicine to either activate the gene or block the gene. And this pathway is going to be very good for most of complex conditions. Um, in the future, CRISP editing can be much more prominent, and it can have many other roles that I don't think we can ethically deal with them right now. I don't think we're mature enough
But you think you will be in
or
the
ready
future?
enough to deal with it.
But you think you will be in the future?
Yeah, I think we will be in the future. I think the low-hanging fruits are, if there's a baby in utero that we know has a disease that will kill him, one single gene, and a disease that's going to kill him with great great pain and suffering for him and all the family within few years, right? So obviously you can fix it, and this is a gene that might be needed all over the body or maybe in one organ, and you'll be able to fix it. This is something that will and should become first. But what about if we decide that we're jealous of you? You figured out many things, so let's develop smart people, okay? So let's find genes for cognitions and brain ability and stuff like that, and now we create all humans that are smarter and smarter. Uh, can this be under control? Can we use it appropriately, really? Will be a society that will be so smart that everybody else will be their slaves, basically?
Do you want to
Uh,
live in a society where everybody's
do
super
you want to
smart?
live in a society? There's one against being immortal for 12 billion years, right? We
Smart
don't know.
people aren't always the most well adjusted socially. I'm not sure that I'd want to be surrounded by the super intelligent at all times. Mickey might be onto something.
Boy, you discovered a lot about us already.
We've been studying for some time. So, I have a question about something that you mentioned in the book about a very promising drug that was patented by a Japanese researcher. That because of the patents, which then expired after his death, couldn't be used to produce a medicine that would have been very helpful. Can you elaborate on that story?
Yes, so you see this bacteria back there, the mitochondria has its own genome, which means it has its own proteins. And my colleagues and I have discovered basically those proteins. We've discovered that the mitochondria is not so um, incapable as we thought. It's not only the energy producing, but there's a lot of communication between this mitochondria and the rest of the body. And the first protein that we've discovered is a protein called humanin. How would that be called in your planet?
Alva-flossanin.
There you go.
We align
and
there.
and and this humanin has really can play role in metabolism, in brain resiliency, mainly in resiliency, in the ability of the body to sustain more breakdown as it ages. Um, and this is really the story, and this is because how we are built here. I mean, if you want to develop a drug and you need money for that, you get the money invested in biotech that, if it's successful, eventually will sell to the pharmaceuticals, will eventually sell the medication. And it's all a business plan because that's how you get the money in the first place.
Yeah.
So if you happen to have a peptide and it's not protected anymore, in other words, anybody can do it, um, then nobody is going to really develop it and make the studies to suggest that it's safe and effective.
Because they can't exclusively license it once they produce it?
Well, because let's so first of all, who's going to give you a money to test it? Okay, who's going to give you the money to test it? It takes to get to a phase 3 trials eventually, depending on what you want to do, but it's like $1 billion,
Yeah.
for most pharmacies. So you have to invest $1 billion. How do you get the $1 billion back if it's generic, basically? Every company can do it and it's not so expensive to do. Um, and this is where is the limitation of our capitalistic society, right? You would hope that there'll be bigger funds by the government that will say, if there are things like that, we want to make sure that we're not losing an opportunity. And this has not been done yet.
Yeah, that's really interesting. On our planet, we've actually separated science from technology and engineering, so we can avoid a lot of these conflicts of interest. But I can't push you too hard on that.
I'm
I want to talk with Yuval Harari. He should talk with you too. I don't know if you know him.
No, but we'd love to.
did he writes books?
He wrote Homo Sapiens.
Oh, I've seen that one. I've seen that one. I haven't read it yet, though.
and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. He's a philosopher of the future.
Mm.
Sounds like
I
our
have a
cup of tea.
feeling that you'll get along.
So I'm curious about the role of pharmaceutical companies and this sort of development in the future. You have a close relationship to biotech, correct? So
Well, I'm a founder of a biotech, and I'm a founder of more than one biotech.
Kobar.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what can be done to fix this sort of orphan condition where, okay, drug development would take $1 billion to make humanin into something that is FDA approved. But what about making it into a nutraceutical or some kind of off label supplement that people take? Is there room for, custom made drugs or 3D printed drugs?
Custom-made plants containing drugs.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you could grow a plant that makes humanin that you could eat, would that
Well,
work?
so humanin is a peptide, which means you cannot really eat it and expect it
I
to come
see.
in. So there are lots of drug development involved, unfortunately.
Because
Look,
the stomach digests it, right?
right,
I see.
right. The the so okay, so you're saying let's form it, let's do it nutraceutical. The problem in nutraceutical is almost the opposite. You can do anything you want, and it wouldn't be under real control. You could advertise whatever you want in nutraceutical, and it doesn't need to be true. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need to do clinical trials, so you'll never know
Mm-hmm.
if it works or it doesn't work. It's only believing to a promise and a potential biology. And so that hasn't been a solution to. Nutraceuticals are important in my mind mainly because they support the economy in this country,
Hmm.
but it's not because they're improving health.
Do you think that an independent regulating commission could crop up and provide a service? Sort of like the organic craze on Earth right now?
Well, I'll tell you what I really think. I think this world, and I don't know if you know, we're in the midst of an epidemic that drives us crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And when we were humans going around and hunting and maybe starting to do some agriculture, all of a sudden, but we became tribes because then you become tribe for few reasons. One is because you have more forces, you can have more people, you can have more people to defend, you can have more people to achieve goals, and you have a leader. That's very in our evolution. Uh, it's it's really important to have leaders, so not everybody has to spend so much energy about planning about the future. Okay,
Hmm.
so you have, but then with tribes, you couldn't build a dam up the river in order to make your lands more fruitful, right? For that, you needed a country. And so
For the
you formed a country.
resources.
And okay, but so I think you know where I'm going, but we need, this is a share world. And share world has several issues. We have a global warming that is really one of the reasons we won't be there 12 billion years. We have epidemics like we have now, and we have things like you said, that is, there's 7 billion people in the world. So let's have a share world that has enough finance in order of taking care where only the world can take care of, and not necessarily a government. At this point, a lot of us are kind of disappointed with our government. Okay, so what's going to happen? We need the world to care, and we need to share it better, and that's what I hope will happen. And this will also extend to what you're saying, to promises that for many reasons cannot be realized.
I love that. But how do you incentivize big, powerful institutions and corporations, which are legally people, to care?
Um, so now you want me to stop being a scientist and be a political, economical commentator?
Just be a
Uh,
human.
This is a question for scientists in some ways because it's an ethical question, right? Scientists spend a lot of time studying.
no, I understand, and I said I just had a vision, my ethical vision, right? But you're asking me how to do it, okay? And that's more complicated. So, by the way, there is a movement called Share World. You can look at it the internet. I actually signed on that. It doesn't have this specific plan, but I hope that I can influence that. And it's about getting, the World Health Organization that should take care of the pandemics of the world, or the warming, or the education, or other things that we hope to make it better. And this is a grassroots organization that, if many believers will join, then it can have the power. But I don't think there's a really magic bullet. I cannot say, oh, I have an idea. If we do it this afternoon, we're done.
So, is this Share World Commission endorsing various institutions and corporations, or sort of just providing guidelines?
Well, Share World has a mission, but for now, it's really a grassroots people where there are a lot of leaders from many fields who are kind of trying to write their constitution and be out there and talk about it. So it's something that I believe and I hope that we'll hear more about. Uh, and it'll start with maybe big agenda items, and people who have money who can support that, and politicians will see that it's attractive, and eventually get the power to do things that are not only reasonable. If you don't do them, you're going to be hit again by dozen of other problems.
It's a very admirable goal to be spending your time on. I appreciate that you're trying to take care of the humans, Dr. Barzilai.
Thank you. uh, I hope that you'll join me, because you have so many secrets that I'm dying to know.
It,
And you're kind of quiet. I mean, uh, you're not, one of you was sharing more than the other. Maybe we should divide and rule you somewhat, but
I have a tendency of talking a lot.
so, I understand you have to go in a few minutes, but I wanted to ask you one last question. Humans seem kind of worried about everything on your planet right now. With this pandemic, there's a lot of fear. What do you consider to be the single greatest threat going forward to your civilization? Just personally.
um, I think that what happens in my world, what happens in medicine is, you know, you ask the American politician, how is the healthcare in America? They say it's number one in the world. It's the best in the world. Okay. Well, based on what are you saying it? Because it's 26 in death, it's 36 in healthcare. I mean, it's doing really, really poorly. And it's doing poorly because there are two worlds. There are worlds of people who have it and can do really well in every aspect of life, including aging and mortality. And there are people who don't have it, who are getting poorer and poorer and sicker, and the discrepancy in lifespan between those groups is 25 years.
Wow.
From where, what important for me and what I'm seeing.
Talk about bimodal.
Yeah, right. And so the issue that holds the world is how are we fair to each other? How one group doesn't run away, right? We don't want some people to be immortalist and the other not. Although it seems that you're okay with it somehow, but anyhow, for another discussion.
Exactly.
But we, okay, I think the fact that with each country, people are going farther is a really danger. Um, and you have to find a way so that everybody can find their happiness. And there are groups that are poor and happy. The Amish in Pennsylvania, it's one religious sect, are happy. The Orthodox Jews are happy, although they're poor pretty much. How do you get people, whether they are poor or rich, or whether they have different other abilities, of course, how do you make them all happy and having access to resources so that you don't make it so extreme that it will have to crush in a way that's can be really unpleasant for everyone. So I would pick that right now, because other things that are on my mind I said before, like global warming, right?
Well,
Hopefully, we can find the answers to that.
those are good ideas.
Thank you. Have a pleasant trip, and don't forget what happens when you land in Central Park in New York.
We'll keep an eye out for the poop.
We'll go there first. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.